Close back in session. Next case is cause number 322622. Case is styled the state of Texas versus Shaylin Keith Henry. Mr. Henry, is that your full name?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henry, would you please raise your right hand? Mr. Henry, do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir.
You may put your hand down. How you doing, Mr. Henry?
Doing great. How about you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for asking, Mr. Henry. I have before me two documents. The first document is titled Judge's Explanation of Rights to Defendants Without an Attorney. Mr. Henry, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
Is this your signature on the line that's titled Defendant?
Yes, sir.
Or these your initials on the line stating you want to waive your right to an attorney and to represent yourself?
Yes, sir.
There's an X. He need to put his initials there. What's an X? He has to date this one too. Needs to date this too. At the top. Okay, now, Mr. Henry, let's do this again. I have this document that's titled Judge's Explanation of Rights to Defendants Without an Attorney. Recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And this is your signature on the line that's titled Defendant.
Yes, sir.
And these are your initials on the line stating that you want to waive your right to an attorney to represent yourself. Is that correct? Also, I have a document that's titled Waiver of Counsel for Purposes of Entering a Guilty Plea. Do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
And is this your signature on the line that's titled Defendant?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Henry, before you sign and initial these documents, did you read the documents?
Yes, sir.
Did you understand what you read?
Yes, sir.
And is everything in these documents true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Henry. I also have before me a document that is titled Information. This information was filed by the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office. This information alleges that on or about February 5th of 2019, while you were in Jefferson County, Texas, that you committed the Class B misdemeanor offense of failure to identify. Mr. Henry, do you understand what you've been charged with?
Yes, sir.
And to this charge, Mr. Henry, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, no contest?
Plead guilty.
Now, are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The defense attorney, basically on that particular day of that court hearing, that I was supposed to be at a health pad at 9:30, working on shore, and that's the reason why I wasn't able to attend that court session.
Okay, now, Mr. Henry, let me read you this information. This information that was filed by the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office states that in the name and by the authority of the state of Texas comes now the undersigned Assistant Criminal District Attorney of Jefferson County, Texas, on behalf of the state of Texas, and presents in and to the county court at law of Jefferson County that in Jefferson County, Texas, Shaylin Keith Henry, hereafter styled the defendant, heretofore on or about February 5th of 2019, did then and there intentionally give a fictitious name and residence address and date of birth to Peyton Collins, whom the defendant knew to be a peace officer who had lawfully detained the defendant and had requested the information. Now, do you understand what you've been charged with?
Yes.
Now, to this charge, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, or no contest?
Is that the same, is that the same failure to identify?
That's what it's charged. That's failure to identify. They're saying that on February 5th of 2019, that you did then and there intentionally give a fictitious name and residence address and date of birth to Peyton Collins, whom you knew to be a peace officer who had lawfully detained the defendant and had requested the information. Okay, so you understand what you've been charged with?
Yes, sir.
And to this charge, how do you plead? Guilty, not guilty, and no contest? Now, are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
And are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? Okay, now, Mr. Henry, I also have before me a document that is titled the Misdemeanor Plea Admonishments. This is also labeled as State's Exhibit Number 1. Mr. Henry, do you recognize this document?
Yes, sir.
On page 2 of this same document, Mr. Henry, he only has one set of initials. He needs to make a choice on this. Let me get that back to you. The part about discovery. Mr. Henry,
Yes, sir.
on page 2 of the misdemeanor plea admonishment, which is State's Exhibit Number 1, there are 2 sets of initials. First set of initials is on a line next to a box that's checked guilty. Mr. Henry, did you place your initials on this document right here above on the line is
Yes, sir. Yes.
next to the box that's checked guilty? Then another set, there are, let's see, one more set of initials that's below a paragraph that's titled Discovery Admonition. And it is on a line next to a box that read, I do not request discovery of the evidence. I waive my right to request discovery in this case and choose to enter a plea of guilty or no contest. Mr. Henry, did you place your initials on this document?
Yes, sir.
On page 3 of this same document, Mr. Henry, there's a signature above the line that is titled defendant. Is that your signature? On the next document that is titled Trial Court Certification of Defendant's Right of Appeal, do you recognize this document? And is this your signature on the line that's titled defendant? There are 2 boxes that's checked at the top of this document. The first box that's checked states that this is a plea bargain case and you have no right of appeal. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
The second box states that you're waiving your right to an appeal, which means you're giving up your right to an appeal. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Henry, before you signed and initialed all of these documents that I have mentioned to you, did you read the documents? And did you understand what you read? And is everything in these documents true and correct to the best of your knowledge? Okay, now, Mr. Henry, you have a right to have a record, a court reporter to type down that everything that's being said here. Are you waiving a right to have a record? You have a right to have somebody to type down everything that's being said in this hearing.
Yes, sir.
Or you can waive your right, give up your right to have somebody to type it down. Do you waive your right to have a record? All right. Now, Mr. Henry, are you a citizen of the United States?
Yes, sir.
State, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1, the misdemeanor plea admonishment. State, you like to offer State's 1?
Yes, Your Honor, state offer states one.
Mr. Henry, I have before me State's Exhibit number 1. That's the misdemeanor plea admonishment. First document that I showed you on this tablet. On page 2, this is the same document that have your initials in the 2 locations on page 2. And it has your signature at the top above the line that's titled defendant. The state would like to use this document as evidence against you in your case. Is it all right for the state to use this document as evidence in your case? Okay, no objections. State's Exhibit number 1 will be admitted. Mr. Henry, is there any evidence that you are currently mentally incompetent to stand trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Henry, I will accept your plea of guilty. I will find that you are mentally competent to stand trial. I will also find that your plea and waivers were freely and voluntarily given. And I will also find that there is sufficient evidence to find you guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. State, do we have a plea bargain agreement?
We do, Your Honor.
What is that agreement?
In exchange for the defendant's plea of guilty in this case, Your Honor, the state is recommending confinement in Jefferson County Jail for a period of 30 days. The state is asking that the court suspend the imposition of that jail sentence, placing defendant on community supervision for a period of 6 months, requiring defendant to pay a $250 fine, Your Honor, and complete 30 hours of community service.
Okay. Mr. Henry, we have a affidavit in here. Mr. Henry,
Yes, sir.
I have before me the judgment. The state is offering that you serve 30 days in the Jefferson County Jail. However, you will not have to serve any time in the Jefferson County Jail because you will be placed on probation for 6 months. During the 6 months probationary period, you'll be required to pay a fine of $250 plus court costs, and the fine plus the court costs is a total of $662. You will also be required to pay a probation fee of $60 each month, a urinalysis fee of $15 each month. Your total monthly installments, that is the total amount that you will be required to pay each month while you're on probation, is $210. Mr. Henry, will you be able to pay the $210 each month?
Like I told the guys, I just started working. I can definitely try.
Okay, my question is, will you be able to pay it, or will you not be able to pay it?
I'm ready.
You'll be able to pay it? All right. Now, you'll also be required to perform 30 hours of community service, and you will be required to adhere to the other standard terms and conditions of this probation. Mr. Henry, do you understand the state's offer?
Yes, sir.
And do you think that the state's offer in your case is fair and just?
Yes, sir.
And do you accept the state's offer?
Mhm.
Mr. Henry, I'll follow the plea bargain agreement that you have entered into with the state. Mr. Henry, you're going to stand on the X to your left, follow the directions of our clerk. Once you finish following her directions, you'll be free to go, and you have a blessed day.
You too.
All right, just please stand on the X. Okay, we'll be in recess for right now.